Hi, welcome to the Time Capsule Show, where we explore the meaning of life in the 21st century through the eyes of people just like you and me. I'm Joenrhuz.
And I'm Joerenz.
And today we have content creator and host of the podcast, Please Don't Kick Me Out, Bianca Wulwick. Welcome, Bianca.
I'm so happy to be here, and thank you guys for having me.
Of course, thank you so much for speaking with us today. We're so excited to have you. You have such an interesting podcast that I can't wait to ask you more about. I mean, in your podcast, you talk about imposter syndrome, a topic that I feel many people aren't familiar with. But first, can you just tell us more about your podcast, what you do, and what inspired you to talk about imposter syndrome?
Yeah, so I am a former marketing director. So that's kind of where my background is. I worked in advertising, public relations, and marketing. That's kind of my last, my career was 10 years long. And then Corona came and took my job, as many people had happen. But I actually had produced a podcast for my boss at my previous position as a marketing director. So I knew kind of the fundamentals. And when I was in college, I was a radio DJ. So I already had the gift of gab, really didn't mind speaking, have never had never met a stranger I didn't meet, didn't like. So for me, the podcast, it came to me kind of in a fever dream after I got laid off, where I thought, well, I've always wanted a podcast. I should do something. And then I thought, man, every day I was at my job, I thought they were going to fire me or be like, oh, you don't belong here. Like, we're going to find a way for you to be fired or whatever. And then it finally happened and I didn't die. And so I started the podcast. And the Please Don't Kick Me Out is basically, the premise is, it's all about imposter syndrome. So we talk about successes and failures. I have a theory that no one has a boring story. However, I've interviewed one too many life coaches recently. And thanks to matchmaker.fm, it's all life coaches. But I really want to understand people's stories. And basically it's equalizing the idea that no one has it figured out, and you can walk into a room and you have every right to be there. And it's just it's deeply rooted in anxiety, but it's not recognized by the psychological handbook. It's a phenomenon that's really only ever had a term since the 70s. Imposter and syndrome, those are two heavy words, but basically I'm not a mental health professional. I'm not an expert. It's just people talking about how they've ever felt other than couldn't accept their accomplishments or felt like they didn't belong. So that's the whole premise. And so I was a weird kid, never fit in growing up. It's a miracle I'm married to someone. They found me, my weird Disneyness just cute enough. And so for me overall, this last year has been a beautiful journey to content creation. So if you ask me if I'd ever go back into an office, absolutely not. I love what I'm doing. It doesn't pay the bills, but I like what I'm doing.
Well said. I mean, for most people, it should be about a passion. It should be something that you enjoy doing, whether you get paid for it or not. And I feel like we're on the same wavelength when it comes to our podcast, because for the Time Capsule Show, we love highlighting everyday people with everyday stories. And no story is boring, and everyone has their own journey that they have the right to share.
Right. Absolutely. And I always had this, I always wanted to be like, that theory that's like always the bridesmaid, never the bride. It was like, I always wanted to be on podcasts. Like I was like a thing. I was like, I have ideas. I'm funny. I can talk. But I never put any effort into it. And this pandemic has shown that content creation is key. We are all on our phones in our house and just, consuming content. And so to be a year into working on this podcast and be further in the game when other people are just starting theirs, I was like, girl, I already did that. I'm in the moon now, and there's also such a beautiful thing with podcast to podcast. So for instance, you'll be on my podcast, I'm on your podcast, that content collaboration, that networking from indie podcaster to indie podcaster is such a beautiful symbiotic relationship. And that's where I'm finding gets the real listens and the real fandom and the real following. And I just launched a website, a podcast about imposter syndrome. I didn't feel like I had enough skin in the game to make a website. I finally have a website, thanks to my designer, Laura, and merch, which is all, you're seeing a little bit of it behind me. I just got my towel in. I also have this, my brand, my brand is very on point now. It's very dialed in. I'm super into nostalgia. I was a child of the 90s and love Disney, as I'm sure you can't tell at all. And I was there when Disneyland reopened. So I'm leaning into what makes me me and what content I have. And I also have something to say. And it's such a compliment when people listen to my podcast and go, holy cow, I've had this my whole life. I didn't know it was called that. I was like, yeah, everyone has it. It's human.
Yeah, that's so true. And that's something we've also found on our podcast, like interviewing like so many different people from different walks of life. There's so many similarities between all of us. And I feel like in today's world, we've become so divided, especially because of like social media and maybe things like politics. But there's things that still weave us all together as people and things we can sort of empathize with each other about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like, just like I say, there's no boring story. I mean, it's all about the pitch, right? And there have been some dud interviews, don't get me wrong, but those are further and farther between. And at first it was like I was interviewing my friends. I was like begging my friends. Then now I'm at a point where the requests come to me. I don't have to go the other way around. And it's sad that my podcast is actually picking up such steam and immense following right as I'm moving. I'm like, I can't keep my head straight. My husband's deployed. He's coming home. I don't know what I'm doing. And now my podcast is popping up. So it has to be, it scares me as a person who didn't really fit in to have to field things and say, no, it needs to go in the queue for later. But it's a place of blessing, you know, a blessing to be where I'm at. And to meet like-minded content creators like yourselves, because that's really the power of podcasting. It's like making someone feel normal, and it's such a beautiful medium. I mean, I listen to podcasts all the time, so I'm really grateful for the opportunities.
Definitely. And you've got such an exciting life with all of that going on.
Oh boy, yeah.
And you know what stood out for me? You mentioned earlier how even people who are later on in life, older people don't even have it figured out themselves. So can I just say, yes, how they expect 18-year-olds to decide what they want to do with their life in college, especially.
Yes. And I mean, okay, so I got I graduated college with a little piece of paper. Did I know anything about marketing or advertising? No, I wasn't prepared. I could barely make my own resume. Why isn't there a course that prepares us better? Like, why isn't there a course on taxes? Why isn't there I had no idea what I was doing. Filling out a W-2? What was that? I had no idea. You know, and it's like, so no one knows what they're doing. And that's the thing, is no one has it figured out. I always have this theory that if someone comes, because the first question I always ask is, do you have it all figured out? If someone said yes, I go, you're a serial killer. Like, get on my podcast. Because you're not supposed to know. And if you're not constantly changing and evolving, then you're not growing. And that's something I've learned. I mean, my podcast has been so therapeutic. I realized I had ADHD, got diagnosed with ADHD at 30, almost 31 years old. I realized that I needed to get into therapy. I was advocating for therapy, but didn't do it. And I just had therapy right before this. But I'm very much a proponent for mental health. It's taught me a lot. It's connected to me to so many beautiful people. It's been a space during the Black Lives Matter, when that was all popular. I did a bonus episode to talk about systemic racism. I hop on topics of social justice, and it's not normal for a military spouse to be loud, and I don't shut up. Ever. And my husband told me that what I say doesn't affect him as long as it's not saying anything personal security wise. So I said, okay. And I talk into a microphone. So I'm all about social injustice and trans lives. And I'm a huge ally for equality for all. And I put the work behind the advocacy work that I do. I'm not just ally theater. I actually genuinely give a shit. Sorry if I cussed, but you know, so I'm like, this podcast has given me a voice and education and so much, and it's been so therapeutic. So regardless of what ends up happening with it, it is my time capsule, so to speak, time capsule of how I handled the pandemic, because I did it pretty much alone.
That's so nice. You're a podcaster with a purpose, and I love that.
Yes. I think a lot of people, they start podcasts without having a purpose, and then they're like, I want to talk to everyone, and there's no direction. And I think podcasts like mine and yours that have this niche idea, they do better in the sense that it's just one topic and it doesn't go off topic and it's not off the rails. I've got like my intake form, which you've already filled out. So, you know, it's like, I've got everything dialed in, and I never know where the conversation is going to go. Right. Like, so it's a free flowing conversation. Only once have I had someone verbatim read their answers to me. And I was like,
that's no fun.
What? Yeah, like you're like, hey, did you get the questions? I was like, oh, I didn't even get them. Just pop in the chat. Like, let's just go. Like, what? I could do this in my sleep, cartwheels.
So you touched on it a little bit before, where you used to be a marketing director, and then you went into podcasting. Do you think there's still another path you would be pursuing besides podcasting if this wasn't it, or is this that path for you now?
I don't know, because it was kind of a weird thing that happened. So I asked for my value as a woman, and I was being paid $25,000 less than the average person as a marketing director in San Diego was promised more money, and had a almost mental breakdown in February around the time Corona was happening. And I walked into my boss's office and I said, "You will pay me more or I'm walking." And he said, "Okay, I can pay you more." And then he retracted it, and then he laid me off because of the pandemic.
Oh.
So, and I had a lot better things to say about him until he rehired whatever, it doesn't matter. It was the greatest gift to be laid off, because I was not happy. I was miserable. I would get the Sunday scaries. I was starting to feel undervalued. We had a really huge health scare in my family where I had to fly back for that. By the time I got back, I felt like I was edged out. I just felt like I wasn't valued anymore, basically. So, and when I look back on it, it's like, I am sick of doing other people's marketing. I just want to do my own marketing, my own brand. And I also don't need to conform for corporate. Like I am sick of putting a mask on every day and being demure and quiet. And I want to be respected. And the only way to do that is to be a champion of yourself and be your own boss. And me being authentically myself now is a lot of work through therapy, a lot of work through podcasting, and a lot of me realizing that I'm okay without this job. So marketing, yeah, I'll always be doing marketing in some way, shape, or form. We're always marketing. We're always selling something. We're always marketing, right? That's always going to be part of it. I know I have the tools to make something successful. That's for sure. And I don't know where it will go. There's some ideas. I might want to work in advocacy or nonprofit or something, but I want to use my voice for good in some way, shape, or form. But I also have a dream of working at the Aulani Hotel when we move to Hawaii. So they just repealed their tattoo policy. I do have visible tattoos for your listeners. It is an audio medium. I'm wearing a Max shirt if you're listening without video. So I'm a little bit out there and kooky, but they just repealed their policy. And I've always had a dream of working for Disney. So I'm going to try and see if I can do that when I move to Hawaii, is work as a cast member.
Oh, that's so amazing. What a life. So you're moving to Hawaii?
Yeah, my husband and I are getting stationed on Oahu. Yeah. So my husband's been gone since September of 2020, and he's coming back end of this month at some point. And I can't say when, but before my birthday is what I tell people. But and then we have about 20 days, and then we have to go to Newport, Rhode Island for a month for him to go to class, and then we move to Hawaii. So it's like I won't be there till like the end of summer, which to be completely settled and stuff. And then it's like, well, now I got to find a house and this, that, and the other. It's like, ugh. But we do own our house here. So I live in Lemon Grove, California, which is a kind of like a part of San Diego County. And we own our house. And so we've got renters for that. I had to get the dog ready. Like Hawaii doesn't want rabies or snakes or COVID. So they make it very, very hard to get like your dog there. You have to do a bunch of stuff for that. You have to do this thing called the Faven test, where it's like 2 injections of rabies shots, and then the tithers of the antibodies, basically, to make sure there's no rabies, and then a health certificate and this, that, and the other. And then you have to catch a flight that's open, hopefully on Shaka Bra Hawaii time, so that they can like direct release your dog. So it's a lot. And I've been handling this podcast plus handling it like a boss. I'm pretty proud of myself. So I am celebrating by taking myself to Disneyland. I got a hotel with a pool. I am going to be there Friday and Saturday. I'm going alone. I'm living my life. But I mean, it's a blessing to be able to go. So I am just handling it. I don't know. They say the military spouse is the baddest bitch you'll ever meet. So
I agree.
I don't have kids, but yeah.
So we're now at the segment of the show that we like to call Past, Present, and Future, where we'll be exploring 3 different periods of your life. How do you see yourself now, and how does it compare to the person you were 5 years ago?
I see myself now as authentically me. I'm not putting on a mask. I'm not apologizing. I'm not accommodating. I'm not a doormat. I am me. I am Bianca. And I have always been a goofball, and I've always been creative, kooky, weird. And I used to shy away from being those things because I didn't like negative attention. Like even when I was dating, I would conform because I didn't want to be me, because that would be harder to be vulnerable. So I'm proud of the work I've done on my mental health and my framework. I'm proud of the fact that I met my soulmate and got married by an Elvis with him. And I love him very much. And he's seen me for me and never had me change a thing about me. I'm also grateful that every single day I'm living myself authentically. I have got great friendships, which I would have never expected because I wasn't really a kid that fit in. I'm a good person who, if you do good by me, I network and I connect you. I'm a connector. I'm not in an MLM, but like, it sounds like I am, but no, I like, so for instance, like, oh, hey, I had a podcast guest. I think it would be good for your podcast. I'll share the details, that kind of thing. So I'm proud of me for that. I know I'm a good person. Past me was always wearing a mask. Past me was always, trying to conform and fit in and, keep up with the Joneses. And present me doesn't stand for that BS. Present me is me every single day. And it comes from a lot of mental health work, a lot of therapy, a lot of understanding childhood trauma, a lot of things that have happened in my life. So when people ask me what's the best advice you could ever give, it's just get a therapist. And the stigma on mental health is not, there's nothing wrong with me, but it's nice to have a neutral third party to bounce my thoughts off of, especially since I've been alone for so long, that it's like nice to be understood and heard. So so past me definitely didn't know who they were and would be ashamed of being themselves because there was negative repercussions from it. Present me couldn't give a fuck. Present me is like, whatever, this is me, you don't like it, oh well.
So if that was the past you and this is the present you, what are you going to be in 5 years? Like, what are your projections for yourself?
Well, hopefully my husband's around. Geez. I mean, he's been gone for so long. I'm like, what's a husband? In 5 years from now, my husband and I will be probably moving back from San Diego. He will be retiring out of the Navy. He's been in 15 years right now. He'll be, I'm about to be 32. I don't know how old you are, but I'm about to be 32. He'll be like, he's turning 34. We're Gemini June babies. So hopefully we'd be moving back to San Diego and I'd be able to work either for the Center of San Diego, which helps with LGBTQIA+, which my friend is actually one of the directors of, or fundraising, I believe. Or I would go back into something I really love is real estate. It really interests me. I used to work for a branch of a Fortune 500 company where I was the marketing director. So I could do some marketing there. Or I don't know, maybe I'll make that trek up and buy a house near Disneyland and work there. We'll see. I don't know. I don't know what 5 years from now is going to be like, but there's definitely not going to be any children involved. I'll tell you that.
You know what's crazy? I feel like we have so much in common because he used to work in public relations. I currently work in advertising. I have past experience in real estate. I did it a lot in college. Okay. So I feel like you're like a culmination of our experiences.
Yeah. Honestly, this is my best advice for your listeners too. If you move to a new place, work for, or if you really want to know it, this is great advice. I give this advice all the time. Work for or in real estate if you can, because then you learn the area really quickly. So I forced myself moving to San Diego. I'm from Denver originally, I was born in Minnesota, lived in Denver after college, and my parents still live in Colorado. And I met my husband while he was attached to a joint billet. So when we moved to San Diego, I was basically a big fish with my past experience that could cherry pick my job deals. And my background is digital marketing, content creation, copywriting, that kind of stuff. I'm usually a one-man band, tuning my own horn, doing everything myself. I'm used to that because I come from Denver where it's like, can you do everything? No, sorry, you're fired. Like, it better be yes. So I've always had this can-do attitude. But when we moved to San Diego, I wanted to get comfortable very quickly. So if I had a client appointment or I had to go somewhere when I was taking this job as marketing director, I forced myself to drive. And then I also forced myself to learn the county. And so I was able to then make educated decisions about, what I needed to do and how to get there. And so people ask me all the time, like, and how long have you lived in San Diego? I was like, oh yeah, just over 2 years. They're like, are you sure you're not a native? I'm like, oh, that's a compliment. Thank you. No, I'm from Denver. And I point to my tattoo. I'm like, I'm from Denver. That's a really good piece of advice I always give people is that if you want to learn a place, real estate's really the way to go. And not that you need to be a real estate agent, but real estate helps you learn the lay of the land a lot quicker. So That's just my advice.
That's so true. I mean, I became a real estate agent around 20 years old, and this is going to sound so embarrassing, but I grew up in New York, and I always thought that Brooklyn was another island in New York. I didn't know that it was right beneath Queens. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the map of New York.
I am, but I've only been there once, and I will tell you, I don't know where anything is. So you could have told me that the sky is red, and I would have believed you. I'm like, okay.
So true, though.
It's funny. No, it's interesting where frames of reference are, and that happens to me a lot because San Diego County is actually the biggest county in California. It's also one of the oldest counties. It's huge. So I live in Lemon Grove, which is just on the edge of unincorporated San Diego. I live super close to San Diego, one of the colleges, and I love where I live. I love the town. I love the camaraderie. I love my neighbors. I have two of the best neighbors in the whole dang world. And they moved in during the start of the quarantine pandemic. So I just cannot thank them for being there for me enough. They are great. And I haven't had that kind of friendliness that I have in Lemon Grove. It's like everyone, like if I go to the grocery store, now that I'm vaccinated, I will go to the grocery store. I was getting everything delivered to me. But I, it's like they remembered me. They'd be like, oh, hey, like, how's your husband's deployment? Like this, that, and the other. Like it's like a community, like they know. And I'm just saying, like, I would have never picked Lemon Grove had I not been working in real estate and had been in the comps and the numbers. I wouldn't own this house unless I worked for Lawyer's Title. So this is kind of, full circle. It's like, I look back on getting laid off and all of that, and I can't look at it negatively because I am so grateful for the opportunity it gave me. It set me free.
See, and these are the things they don't teach you in school, and you got to learn through it with life experience and work.
Right. People ask me all the time, like, what if you could go back in time, what would you change? I'm like, nothing, because not everything I did, everything that happened for a reason. And because of that, I'm very positive as a person. I don't really look negatively at things. And so I, after, being hurt, being laid off and being like, oof, like my wounds a little bit, I realized, looking back on this and looking back on my last year and my memories, I am a different person. I came out this like a phoenix. I'm different. I'm grateful. I mean, we can take this pandemic and be negative, or we can take it and be positive. And if we're putting stuff that's out there in the world that's good, like, that's a good feeling. Like, there's just so much positive content creation now and so much good. Like, everyone was like Tiger King banana bread. And I was like, I'm gonna start a podcast.
That was a time. Oh my God. That was a time.
Oh my God. Can I tell you something? So my unemployment, I still have unemployment through California, and my unemployment, every single 2 weeks that I have to certify for benefits, I'm traumatized by my password hint. It's a cowboy hat. Password hint says Joe Exotic. To your listeners, don't hack my UI. but I don't even remember what the password is. I have it LastPass. So, but yeah, I mean, it's like, I look at it and I'm like, God, that feels like a million years ago.
But actually just one.
Yeah, I know. I was like, I've lived 75 years in the last year.
Yeah, it's crazy how life is like that. And going to the point you had previously about going to therapy, like, that's so true about like how mental health is so low. Even today, when we're so much more open about it, it's still pretty stigmatized. And in fact, there's even turning into like stereotypes and misunderstandings. Therapy is super important. I remember I finally made the choice to go see like my college therapist and then take advantage of the resources on campus. And it's been immensely helpful in developing as a person.
Yeah. So in men, it's a lot more stigmatized, but we're learning that it doesn't need to be, because with men, their suicide rates are a lot more volatile and a lot more sloppy. Women, when they commit suicide, I'm just giving you the facts that I know. Women, when they commit suicide, tend to try to be private and quiet about it. Also, so mental health is very important, but the reason why the men's suicide rate is higher is because we stigmatize it. So mental health is absolutely very important. And a lot of the time, people have a negative experience with their first therapist. Because they had a negative experience with their first therapist, they never go back. It didn't work for them. I got very, very lucky that my therapist, Justina, and I clicked immediately. And, I've never had that. I've always felt like a cold read from anyone I've ever tried. Like, and when I was in high school, my parents made me do therapy, but I had to be doing therapy with them. And the therapist and my parents ganged up on me. And I was like, this is a negative experience. I don't like it. When really, if they had just gotten me diagnosed with ADHD, my depression, all of that would have gone away. Like, wow, what a concept. The second experience I had was in college, or was in college, and diagnosed me there. My parents said, we're not going to let you fill the script to have your Adderall. No, that's not helping. We don't believe that you really have a problem. I said, okay. Then, so I was like, all right, it didn't work out there. And then I started going to therapy after college. I was in a relationship where my boyfriend was like, get therapy, you're crazy. I was like, wow, that's rude now that I think about it. And so I went a couple of weeks and I was like, this isn't for me. I don't need it. And then we broke up anyway. So I have had negative start and stops, right? Where it just didn't click, didn't fit, didn't work. So basically the fact that the first therapist I tried in San Diego that took my insurance, which is TRICARE Select, and TRICARE pays for weekly therapy, we clicked immediately. She was wearing a Disney sweater and I was like, okay, one of us got it.
That's the sign.
And I don't need it every week. Some weeks I go and I have nothing to complain about. This week I had something that really upset me happen, and I had a really negative experience happen to me, and I just wanted to talk about it. And also, am I grateful for it? Yes, because like I kind of was touching on earlier, like, especially people that are alone, like myself, like, yeah, I have my dog, but like, I'm always wondering if the FBI is like bugging my house, and like, am I the Christmas party fodder or whatever? But really, like, it's just me and my thoughts all day. And I need it sometimes just to be understood and heard, and to understand and to do the work. People usually quit therapy when it gets quote unquote hard. Oh, no. We're scratching the surface. And they usually give up because you're hitting on some traumas that if you don't want to grow or change from it, it's going to hurt and it's going to suck. And that's usually where people quit. So to be able to come to you guys today and say like, yeah, like I'm not just saying therapy is great. Everyone needs a therapist. I also call her by name. Shout out to Justina. And I tell people about it because we need to destigmatize it. And a lot of the time as a content creator, we need to use our voice for good and for change and for advocacy when we can. So I always advocate for mental health. It's so important. If you're a man, woman, non-binary, gender fluid, doesn't matter what your sexuality is. Therapy's for everyone. It's so stigmatized. My mom won't even call her a therapist. They'll say counselor. I'm like, no, it's a therapist. Like, so it's just funny how the older generation who probably does need therapy more than us doesn't use it.
100%. And I mean, what do you think are the solutions to destigmatize therapy, especially with the gender differences that we see? Like the data is, vastly different between men and women.
Yeah.
Therapy. So what's the solution?
The first job I ever worked for was this advertising company called Cactus, and they have this thing called mantherapy.org, I believe. They did a huge campaign for University of Colorado Health, and doing so, they were able to bring awareness to men and men mental health, right, to destigmatize it. So they did like video campaigns, billboards, you name it. It's something that I got to work on the tail end, so I can't really quite take credit for it. However, the advocacy work that they did there was really impressive. I just didn't fit in at this advertising agency. So I'm just surprisingly, for as weird and kooky as I am, that just doesn't seem to work in a hipster advertising agency. So what I will say is that they did really good work, and there's so many statistics. And because I was curious like a cat, I kept learning about it because I was like, okay, so how can I fix it? So one of the things I've noticed recently, and my husband's in the military, it used to be if you had a problem and you needed to go to therapy, that was seen as a bar or a red mark on your career, and that's not good. Now it's okay because people were committing suicide so often that they were like, okay, well, maybe therapy's not bad. Let's have a counselor on the ship, whatever. So as these stigmatized and very, very arbitrary dinosaur archetypes kind of dissolve and go away, we're seeing more and more of acceptance with it. So to your listeners, if they're struggling and they want to get a therapist and they feel weird about it, no one cares. It's so normal. It's so normal. It's helpful because there's sometimes that I just don't have the mental space to be my friend's therapist. It's like, okay, Susan, like I also am handling a lot right now. Like, what do you want? So, I mean, a therapist is a nice, neutral, once a week. There's a lot of access to it. Even if you don't have insurance, you can still, through like a BetterHelp or, Calm app or whatever, there's a lot of resources. So to say that like, ooh, I don't know where to start, ooh, it's stigmatized. No, that's an excuse. Everyone needs a therapist.
Definitely. So, so thank you for, giving that advice to our viewers. Hopefully people can begin to start going to therapy, especially because I think a lot of people, especially during these times where they may feel alone during the pandemic. But going back to how you live your life and everything and all the lessons that you've learned in your journey, what principles do you live your life by?
I don't set New Year's resolutions. I set intentions. I always intend to be a good person. And so I do that with every part of me. Be the best friend I can be the best content creator I can be the best social justice advocate I can be, do all the things. I don't like the theory of ally theater. I don't like the theory of just, only sharing activism where activism is not needed. I absolutely do put my voice out there for good. It's sometimes a martyr for things, but at the end of the day, my words of advice to live by is just be a good person, intend to be a good person, do good, be good. And I'm also an empath. So I love a lot. Sometimes it's a fault, but I'm proud of the fact that I am leaving San Diego by connecting friends so that they can meet one another and their friendship can live on without me, which is sad, but I'll be back. But it's nice to connect people and connect content creators and all of that. So I just will continue to be a good person. That's my advice.
That's so awesome. And in your life, what would you say you're grateful for?
I am grateful for my husband, 100%. So I am grateful that I did not give up on dating and that I gave him a second chance. Yeah, we almost didn't meet, but I'm just grateful that fate, I'm a strong believer in fate. I'm a strong believer in the universe, as kooky and neuropa as that might sound, and bouldery. My parents live near Boulder, as that might sound, but I do believe things happen for a reason, and you have to just take every opportunity you can and not look back. I don't live with regret. Living with regret is a negative thing that you don't need to do. So I know that everything I did led me to him. And then everything from there I could have never imagined. It's all because I have my best friend. He's like my soulmate, my partner. And it's just, he has been the biggest gift because he's always seen me for me. I've never had to make concessions for him. I've never had to change who I was, except for my last name. That's his joke.
That's really nice. And that's one thing I've heard people say about, finding your true love. It's when they can love you no matter what, even at your lowest point, they still love you. Even when you may look like a mess or feel like a mess and they still love you. For me, that's the epitome of just finding your soul partner.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I always tell people, like, don't compare your love story to someone else's, but it sounds cliche, but it truly is real. When you stop looking, it happens. And when you focus on yourself, it happens actually. So I had rage quit a job, took a solo trip to Chicago, was logging in to delete all my dating apps. And I was like, might as well just read the messages. Cause what the species of man could not be any worse. And there it was in my other inbox. It was a message from him. And I was like, this guy again. Okay. And I went on a date with him, and 72 hours later, we were still together. And then a month later, I moved in, and then we got married 8 months after dating. Very typical military. And we've been married for 4 years this October. So
congratulations.
You know, and that, but also people are so quick to judge because people are negative, because a lot of times people haven't experienced that. And so I just, I never faltered. I was like, all right, think what you're going to think. I'm going to prove you wrong.
They should make your story into a Lifetime movie. It's incredible.
Oh my god, yes. Okay, but
I'll pitch for you.
Who would play me? Who would play me? Ooh, I don't know. I don't know who typically is in these movies. Someone. I mean, I kind of want to say, well, no, because
Jennifer Lawrence.
Oh, that's so nice. Thank you. I'm kind of feeling like I have the personality of Melissa McCarthy a little bit, but I'm not as big as Melissa McCarthy, so I'm not sure. We're not the same size. I'm definitely small, tiny person. Maybe Kate McKinnon. I don't know. I'll have to think about that. That's a good one. Maybe I'll have an answer when I interview you later.
Yeah, we'll circle back later.
Yeah.
So now we're up to the part of the show where we get our title from, Time Capsule. And I got to say, it's one of our more difficult questions here on the show. So if you were to leave something in a time capsule for people to dig up 100 years later, what would you put in there and why?
Guy Fieri signed frying pan.
Interesting.
Oh, okay. So I'm obsessed with Guy Fieri. He's also a very, like, he's a meme of a man, but my friend for my wedding got me a Guy Fieri signed frying pan. Here's why I want to leave it. I want the aliens to think that we were all wearing flame shirts, going to Flavor Town. I want them to know that the Flavor King has risen. Oh my God. I don't know. I have ADHD. So like immediately I was like, Guy Fieri frying pan, say boop.
That would be hilarious. Just imagine like someone thinking of those. Everybody like Guy Fieri back then.
Could you imagine?
Their Lord and Savior.
I can't. That just the thought of it cracks me up. Like I'm gonna be thinking about that day and be like, so funny, right? Could you imagine, like, right? If the only artifacts were like a frying pan, a flame shirt, maybe a goatee, maybe a visor. And like a signed photo of Guy Fieri saying, keep it cool. Cause that's what my frying pan says. Keep it cool, Guy. I also have a signed apron. When I moved into my new house, my friend gave me the apron. Not as cool as the frying pan. Sorry, Sarah. But I have that. And then I have a Funko Pop of him. I have a votive candle of him. And we stayed at his hotel. I just think he's funny. I got cast onto a Guy Fieri show and I turned it down actually because I got a job offer and it coincided and the per diem wasn't enough. I would have won. I have the personality for TV. But
I think so too.
I would have won. It was like you didn't even have to cook. You just had to have a concept of a show. So mine was, don't steal it, listeners, a pizza your city. Okay, because I have a pizza tattoo, right? And I would go to, here's the concept. Let me pitch it, right?
Tell us.
Concept is I go to towns and I say, what's your favorite pizza, right? Like and it's like rivalry pizzas, right? And like, so college towns, back alleys, New York, whatever, show me your favorite pizza. And then I taste test it and I tell you which one I think is better. And I want to do that throughout the United States. That's what I wanted to do. I turned it down for a couple of reasons. 1, the job. 2, the per diem. 3, I just started dating my husband. And 4, I was the heaviest I'd ever been. And since then I have a Peloton and I now work out all the time, and pizza and I have a okay relationship. But food is learning to love my body and love myself and accept myself. I just wasn't at that point. Wouldn't have been good. So I would have not wanted to read the comments. So I love Guy Fieri is the point. And all of my TikTok content where I hop into Guy Fieri cosplay, I'm always 2 seconds away from doing it, flops. But I do have a friend and her name's Kaylee. And I met her through TikTok, and all of her content that's Guy Fieri is so good. I'm like, beating this algorithm. Why they don't like me? Oh. I put a Powerline costume on, and that actually got more views. And I was like, what?
Yeah, I don't get the algorithm for TikTok.
No, it's bad. And the best advice I can give your listeners for that too is that you just keep creating, even if it flops. Who cares? Whatever. I mean, the first time I had TikTok, I got in a fight with a child over Chick-fil-A. And so I deleted it. And I was yes, 11-year-old child. I made a video about how Chick-fil-A has kind of funded some very racist and homophobic things over time. So I don't eat it. And this person was like, don't come for my nuggets. And I was like, okay. So I was like, I'm a 31-year-old woman fighting with a literal 11-year-old child. I should not have this app. I need to delete it. But now I have it again because I started a TikTok when I got my puppy, which you can kind of see. He looks like that. But yeah, so I do use it now. I don't understand it. I just realized I have the live feature. When I went to Disneyland, I was like, oh, I just press a button and okay. And I was like, well, none of these 12-year-olds told me how to do this. I'm 84 years old. I don't understand how to do anything.
Oh man.
Oh my God. I love that. All right. So is there anything else you want to add? Any final words you might have for our viewers?
My final words would be just the sooner that you can live authentically, the better you're going to feel. That is something that's resoundingly true. Imposter syndrome creeps in when you are doing something disingenuous to yourself. And so it's just my best advice is if you can get out of your own way and live your life authentically, you're going to feel a lot better. And also get therapy. Therapy's great.
So true. And where can people follow you on social media?
Yeah, you can follow my podcast, which will lead you to everything. It's at Please Don't Kick Me Out. At Please Don't Kick Me Out. You can go to my website, check out my merch that I was talking about. It's pleasedon'tkickmeout.com. drop me a line, although I am dark on interviews right now because I'm very, very busy and moving away and going to Disney and all of that. But you can find me on social media through that. Drop me a line, give me a listen. Hopefully you like what you hear. And yeah, feel free to follow me. I'm a lot of fun. I might get in Guy Fieri or Powerline drag at the drop of a hat. You don't know. I'm a weirdo.
Well, Bianca, thanks so much for being a part of our time capsule, and thank you to our viewers for watching. Please make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and to follow Bianca on all our social media channels. Tune in again next week to meet another amazing addition to our time capsule.